Welcome to CSM Mistakes Were Made. I'm Anita, and I'm going to show you how I cranked the second of two socks I made with a pattern that I got from CSM Supplies. It's a free pattern written by Jan Dwyer, and it's called the Moving Tuck Stitch, and it forms a really neat Dominoes pattern. You can see it really lends itself to this self-striping yarn. And I wanted to show you, this yarn is a Felici product. It's this yarn was a Good Guy colorway. It comes in 50-gram skeins like this, and so you need two 50-gram skeins for two socks. And it's important to know that this is engineered to be matchy, so that each sock is the stripes will match. I wanted to mention that because I don't think that it'll make sense about how I chose to fix the third and most severe mistake if you didn't know that it's supposed to be a matchy set of socks. I wanted to mention too that I did use Lycra on these, and it's not that big of a deal, but you might see the Lycra in the video. I should put a trigger warning because I have, true to form, catastrophized and then gone completely 180 degrees a couple of times. So keep in mind that I'm a little bit all over the place about how to approach some of the mistakes I make. I don't know if you're like that, but I tend to think the worst at first, and then if I just calm down and think it through, things end up working out, which they did in this case. The video does end abruptly at the heel of the second sock, and it's well after all of the drama with the mistakes that I've made. So I don't think you'll miss anything by not seeing me crank a foot and a toe. So I apologize. I think my battery had run out and I didn't notice it, or maybe I ran out of space on my SD card. I'm not sure. Finally, when you finish watching this, let's get back together and I'll show you some ideas I had while I was editing this about how I might have been able to do something a little bit different with the most severe mistake I make. It's the third mistake in there. And I will come back after the video and we'll talk about how I might have been able to fix it a little bit differently. And then finally, in the video, you'll see that I place a little metal marker at a place where I've tried to fix a drop stitch in pattern. I try to fix it in pattern, and you'll see me kind of fiddle around with it, and I'll show at the end of the video how it looks. So please enjoy the video and leave comments or suggestions. Thanks. I'm starting where we all start, by using some waste yarn. Then I run one row of ravel cord, which is right here, and I begin and end my ravel cord on needle number 1. So needle number 1 gets both the beginning and the end of it, and then needle number 1 will also get the first loop of the project yarn, which in this case is also yellow, so it's hard to see. I'm getting my ribber because I'm going to set this up for Juana's cast on with a 1x1 rib. And I did forget to insert Lycra for the first 3/4 of a row, but I'm putting it in now. It's not a big deal. All right, so we're doing all of the 1x1 needles, speeding it up. I wish I could go this fast. And I have just finished about 1/2. I have to crank forward so I can expose the rest of the ribber dial to put the rest of the ribber needles in. And we'll crank a Juana's cast on after I get these in. And 15 rows of 1x1 ribbing. 15. Now here's the interesting part of this pattern. I had to think about this when I did this one. I'm doing 15 rows, and then the first tuck stitch that I'm moving will be this one. So bear with me, this is kind of a transition row. It's a transition between 1x1 rib and then stockinette. We're also going to introduce some of these tuck stitches. And so let me show you what I mean by that. It actually develops into a little pattern. So get the first few going where we're swapping all of these, and if in case it isn't clear, we'll be able to take the ribber off. I'm going to get a running start here with all of these, and I actually will also reset my counter. When you do this roving tuck stitch, you do have to be aware of counts in the sense that you'll be doing 3 rows of one tuck stitch and then 1 row of plain knitting. So you have to kind of keep track of that. But the other thing is overall how many leg rows you want to do. What I ended up doing is deciding that I was going to do 78 rows of leg, and then I did 10 rows of pre-heel, turned the heel, and then I did stockinette for the foot. Okay, so we're well underway with swapping out all of the cylinder needles. We've done about a third of them. So now what I want to do is, before I get too far, because I will have to advance this to get this tappet plate off so I can swap these out. I remember that being really a tough concept to really grasp when I was a new cranker. Like, how far can I go before I have to move things? And you do get the hang of it. If you don't now, you will get the hang of it. So I'm going to raise this. I'm going to raise every third needle. And the fact that I have this spring on the spring rest makes these kind of unstable. So be a little careful with that. So we've done that. I'm going to reset my counter to do overall, I believe, 80 stitches. I'm going to keep swapping out all of these ribber needles for cylinder needles and try not to mess myself up with the roving tuck stitch needles. So let's get a few more of these and we'll get that pattern going. So I'm lifting these, again, being careful because lifting them too much with that spring rest being in use, these are rather unstable. All right, so I'm checking to make sure that I can crank forward, and I believe I can. And we'll just remove the rest of these, and our transition row is going to be complete here in just a second. So I should have only 3 more to do, and then I can show you what we do next. Yeah, this is probably the hardest row. You're switching from 1x1 to stockinette and the 1x4 pattern of the roving tuck stitch. Okay, mistakes were made. I lifted 4 here instead of 3, so I'm going to have to repair this. Over here, I accidentally put 4 cylinder needles in between these, so I'm off by 1. Now, it's not going to be too hard to fix. I'm sure we'll figure it out. But the problem is that the V-cam is right in here. And I can't really lower the needles where this is. So What I think I'll do is change the ones I can change here and knit around and then go back and swap out these. So that should be up. This one should be up and this should be down. So we can make these changes pretty easily here. And we'll just get those done. So some of these have knit. Most importantly, some of the ones I didn't want to knit have. So what I think I will do is crank forward. I'm going to go around a little bit here. So my V-cam has is about here. So we're far enough away from this problem area here that we can make a correction. I should have lifted this one and I should have put this down. Should have lifted this one and put this down. So I'm going to just make those corrections, but that's only part of it. What I need to do next is knit this one. Okay, so that one was originally an up needle that didn't knit. That's the tuck stitch. But now to undo this one so that it looks like the other ones. So we shall raise that. Okay, so now I've knit the stitch on the needle that was up that I want down, and then I've dropped the stitch off or made it sort of not knit for the needle that I needed to have up. So I'll just continue that. Next, we're going to take this one off and raise it. Okay, so we're doing, I think we have a couple more to do, and then we should be good to go. This is the one, well, it probably doesn't matter which order I do it in, but I'm going to pull that off and raise it. And then this one that didn't knit, because it was raised, we do need it to knit. So we'll knit that by hand. The raised needles should have the stitch before and then just a wrap around it. Okay, so let's just see, 2. And again, let me zoom in. You can see that there are two wraps around that one. We have to go a third time. So the needles that are out of work don't get knitted 3 times. There's three running strands on each of these. So that's how it should look. And now what we do is we lower the all of the needles for 1 row. You get very fast at it, but there's so much bulk. There's 3 strands on each of these needles that you have to be kind of careful. Now I just tried pushing that down, but that V-cam is right in there, so I can't. So example of how you're basically chasing the work around the cylinder because you can't get to all the needles at the same time. You have to move things out of the way. So as you can see, these are raised up a little bit in the half knit position. About a third of this row knitted. We needed to advance this so that we could get to all of these. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to end at about right here. And now I'm going to do my second one. The second tuck stitch is now going to be the second needle in. So the first tuck stitch was this one, and then 3 in the middle. Now we're going to raise the one next to it, 3 in the middle, 3 in the middle. Maybe I should be a little bit more careful than I was for that transition row. And again, I get to a point where I can't lift because the needles are stuck under the cam in this case. So I have to advance a little bit. And raise every 4th needle. This is all good. I'm going to go 3 times around. So here's the beginning of 1, that's 2, and that's 3. Now we lower them with the same problem. I can't get lower because that V-cam is right there, so I'm going to have to advance. I'm going to advance. It seems that having to do this in phases, I'm usually going to be stopping my yarn carrier at about 5 o'clock and at about 11 o'clock. So this is 12, 12 and 6. So, you know, an hour earlier. All right. So I've got the beginning of the plain round, and now stopping at 5, and I'm going to do my next tuck stitch, which is on needle number 3. So this little marker, of course, helps you keep track. Into the half knit position. Now we have done 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th one. If we went to the 5th one, which we could do, we do need to get that one, but our pattern actually starts over. So we'll start over with needle number 1, and around to 5 here. Start over with needle number 1, and then every 4th needle. So this is repeating. This is the first of 3 rows. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and I'm stopping at 5. All right, I'm spotting a mistake. Does anybody see a mistake? And I have to analyze what has gone wrong. Okay, this one didn't knit. I'm wondering if I dropped a stitch down here. So let me just catch this. Job 1 is always damage control. If you think you've dropped a stitch, and I believe I have, grab that sucker. There it is right there. So, okay, there was a drop stitch. Now, repairing a drop stitch is not usually a problem, but repairing a drop stitch in pattern can be a problem. So let's take a look at what we've got here. I've got this little guy here. I want this needle's stitches to resemble this needle's stitches. So I'm going to use this needle's healthy stitches as a guide to repair what looks like a drop stitch, and I'm quite sure it is, right here in this column. So I'm going to grab my trusty latch hook tool, get that stitch on here, and actually put it underneath there, and then get that right like that and pull it through. And at least when I'm doing this, I reserve the right to say, nope, that's not right, and then I, of course, can undo it. So I recognize that within this, there may indeed be something that doesn't quite look right, because I am trying to honor the fact that there's a pattern here. All right. I may have gone one too far. So let's just see here. I'll probably put a trigger warning on this for people, because this could be triggering for people to see me mess around. So I believe this needle needs to close on the wraps it just made from below. Okay, that's a wrap that will need to close. That was up before. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is grab this stitch from underneath and knit all of these three together and put that on this needle. Now, have I made a proper and good repair to that stitch that I dropped? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll continue. I feel pretty good about it, but I'll tell you what, we'll mark it so that we can examine it after it's off the machine. I'm going to put this clippy, well, it's not really a clippy marker, it's a metal marker right there. And what we'll do is when we get it off the machine, we'll examine to see if I've got a pretty good repair there. All right, so mistakes were made, and mistakes were dealt with as well as could be expected. Good. So I'm looking here to see if I'm anywhere close to being done, and my notes say that I need to do 78. I'm at 54, so we got to keep going on this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop at 5. So we're going around once, and we now need to lift that needle. Okay. I've just gone too far. Mistakes were made. I've gone too far. 82 versus 74. This one is going to be at least 8 too long. Oh, for heaven's sakes. I know that's some very strong language, but I'm inclined to rip this whole thing out. I was keeping track of this, and it jumped up to 82 so fast. I can't believe it. You know, if it were 2 rows, maybe 4 rows too many, I think I'd be okay. But this is just terrible. Tragic comedy. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, what are the options here? Mistakes were really made on this one. Here are the facts. The first sock I cranked had okay, a little whiplash here. Okay, when I make mistakes, I need to think them through before I do anything. And you just saw an example of how I was jumping all around. I think likely to keep going. We know that the first sock has 78 rows of this tuck stitch. At the very least, I've got 82 rows. I am 4 rows over. And I think what I'm going to do is continue. I think I'm going to try to save the sock. I'm going to accept that this particular sock might be a tad bit longer than this one. But one thing I can do is make it up in a pre-heel, and maybe just instead of doing 10 pre-heel rows, I'll do 8 and kind of split the difference a little bit. One consideration is with a pattern like this, your eye might be drawn to where this color change is more than somebody saying, oh, looks like you did 6 pre-heel rows instead of 10. So one consideration to adapt to this mistake and make the best of it is to go ahead and crank to where the red is going to start. Let's try that. Okay, here we go. Let's do that. So I'm at 84. I'm going to restart my counter. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Let's see how this all looks. 3. Now I am seeing some red coming in. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can live with this. I think what I've done is damage control. So again, let's go back to this. See this real time happening. I've done this field of stockinette in a pre-heel, and I've added a couple here. So my stockinette really on this next one isn't going to start until a little bit farther down. So I think I've managed to put a stripe of red of 3 rows here. Yes, and then we will crank the heel back and forth, and then resume. It should go all through the red, the blue, most of the yellow, and have a couple of yellow left off. Let's see. What's the worst that can happen? Okay. Let's go do that right now. So we're about to crank a heel. I did a +2 deep heel, so that's going to be done on this one too. Okay, good. Everything's set. I don't need the counter. I do need my heel spring in. And we'll start cranking a heel. first part of the heel is lower 2. All right, back out for, okay, we're on the decreases. When you can't push down, again, it's because that big V-cam hasn't been advanced far enough. Now I can. Okay. So after watching the video, I promised that I would come back and show you some of the outcome of the mistakes that I made. The first mistake in the video was that I just got messed up counting needles for that tuck stitch, and I think I fixed that pretty well. You just have to go back and revise the stitches on the needle, so that was no big deal. The second mistake was a little bit more serious, and that was a drop stitch in pattern. And I put a little clippy marker to show where that was, and I will say that if I take this out, you can see that those stitches don't look exactly like they should, yet I'm okay with that. That's where the mistake was. I'm okay. It doesn't look perfect. I wouldn't try to submit these to the CSKMS if I were trying to get my certification. This would not be a set of socks that I would ever dream of submitting. But there's no hole there. It just doesn't look great. Okay, so that's one, but I'm okay with that. The final mistake that was made was the missing my 78 rows. I went over it by 4 stitches. And is that a big deal? No. Could I have just made a slightly longer sock and moved on with my life? Yes. But I'm interested in figuring out things, and what I ended up figuring out, which I think I'm really satisfied with, is just making up for the extra 4 rows by shorting the pre-heel a little bit. And most importantly, I just thought I would respect the pattern of the stripes so that people would think these are a matched set of socks. So they don't quite match, but they're matchy enough. And for the record, if anybody can think of a way to put a row alarm in, that would really help. I don't know if I'm the only one that ever forgets and goes too far. And that's the last thing I want to mention about this. As I was editing this, I realized, wait a second, Anita, why couldn't you just have tinked back 4 rows and then gone on my way and cranked a heel and cranked the foot and finished this sock? So it didn't dawn on me until I was editing this that could have been a really more elegant and easier way, and much easier than starting over, which was one of my ideas, was going to frog this whole sock. So there you get to see me at my best and my worst. In some ways, doing this channel has made me a worse knitter because I think I'm distracted when I'm capturing video. But it's made me a better knitter because I can see a lot of the mistakes I make, and I can kind of ponder them for a while and think about, wow, now I see how that happened. So it's all to say, I'm having so much fun doing this, and I hope that my emotional response to some of my mistakes is not triggering for you. So please leave some comments and suggestions, and thank you so much for watching. CSM Mistakes Were Made.